And we are live. Hi, folks. It is interview day on a Wednesday. I have Charles Mayfield with me today. We're going to be talking about his regenerative farm, quite a bit about the marvelous, wonderful pig, the pastured pig in particular, regenerative farming. But we're also going to be talking about skincare. In fact, that's what we're going to spend the most amount of time on because Charles has done a great deal with actually creating value-added product using pig lard for our skin, which might sound a little bit crazy at first, but I think you're going to find out today it's a really innovative and really awesome idea. And one of the ways that regenerative farmers are going to be able to actually make a profit is to think more and more about value-added product in addition to just straight product. So with that, hey, Charles, man, welcome to the Survival Podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Jack. I've been a fan of yours for some time, so happy to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Let's start off with just like the elevator, who are you question. Like, who is Charles and how did you even get into the world of regenerative farming? Did you grow up farming or like many people in our community, did you kind of come from some total other walk of life and decide it's just a better way to live?
Yeah, sure. It's a little bit of a hybrid. My family's history is in the dairy business. Although by the time I was coming of age, the family business had really turned more into a milk bottler versus a dairy farm. However, I grew up. We had my parents were kind enough to have a big garden and occasionally some goats and chickens and rabbits and peacocks. I would advise your listeners to avoid peacocks at all costs. But
I'm anti-peacock.
Yeah,
I'm anti-peacock because the noise they make. That's why. That's the only reason.
And they poop everywhere. They're everywhere. So no, I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. I started out of college in the financial services industry as a financial planner. Got exposed to sort of got into the fitness nutrition world. Probably 15 years ago, got a little into the CrossFit. I'm sure you've heard of that. Met some really influential people in the nutrition world, Rob Wolf being Mark Sisson, some of these names you may have heard. Anyway, long story short, got through sort of the paleo community, got exposed to regenerative ag and really sort of sourcing high quality food, giving people the right to source their food. Got involved with the Weston A. Price Foundation, the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund. And, at some point, just I studied Joel Salatin, and Polyface is sort of my de facto farming mentor. And, you know this, you reach a point, it's like, I'm not going to learn anything else from a book. So it's time to jump in with both feet. And so that was 2016. Bought my first set of pigs and chickens. And we have a small regenerative farm here in East Tennessee. I service about, 30 to 50 customers, mostly through food drops. And so that's really sort of the background story. We can get into more detail about Farrow and the skin creams and that whole roller coaster as we get into it.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask you the next question. It's going to look like I disappear for a second. Just roll. The dog opened the door, so the kid noises are going to come in if I don't shut the door. Anyway, can you kind of now talk about skin more macro level before we get into the product itself? Like, it was interesting to me that I saw in your notes when you applied to be on the show that the skin is actually referred to as the second stomach. I found that really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I mentioned earlier that sort of the paleo community. My ex-wife and I published a number of paleo cookbooks starting back in 2012, paleo comfort foods. But it was really that the paleo world that turned my eyes to additives and preservatives in food, and that's sort of the lens that I viewed the world from. And back in 2019, I had a really horrific sunburning experience, and happened upon the medicine cabinet was empty, and so I happened upon a jar of lard. I do a lot of cooking. using the pastured lard from my pigs. And, it was one of those what the hell moments. I'm burned to a crisp. And so I lathered up. And the point being is I saw tremendous results from this. And so took my paleo nutrition lens, that I viewed the world through and sort of tunnel visioned. And I started shining that lens on skincare. And, you don't know what you don't know, but, come to find out, my God, so our skin is our second stomach. We absorb and metabolize a lot of nutrients via the sun, but also just exposure to various things. Everyone's familiar with poison ivy. We've had an exposure to an oil or something or other from nature, and that's worked out not so well. But anyway, I started looking into what the FDA allows in our skincare, and it's abhorrent, man. I mean, it's worse than what they allow in our food, which you and I both know is pretty tragic in and of itself. And so, the idea of the second stomach is it's twofold. One is our skin is semi-permeable, so it does absorb things. But the scarier part is, if we eat something, it goes through this, very long process, highly acidic, break it down. It's just because people don't understand this. This is more on the nutrition front. But this, Jack, just because something goes in my mouth doesn't mean it ends up getting in my body. Right? It just because it goes in doesn't mean it gets in. With the skin, that's not the case. If it soaks into the skin, it's here to stay. And so yeah, I started tinkering around with recipes, utilizing animal fat, which was the cornerstone of pretty much all cosmetics, creams, elixirs, tinctures, salves. Name the descriptor for skin treatment up until the turn of the 20th century. And lo and behold, this stuff works unbelievably well at feeding and curing, healing. Got to be careful what words you use. Feeding. I'm just going to say nourishing skin. Animal fat we're an animal, so animal fat works very well.
Really interesting. There's a few things I kind of pick up on there when you were talking about that, and one is the idea of things getting absorbed by our skin and how that goes into our bodies directly. It goes into our bloodstream. We have billions of little capillaries all through our skin. That's why it doesn't die and fall off and rot, right? It has to be kept alive. And so we're actually taking in things that get on our skin directly into the bloodstream, where, like you said, going to the digestive tract, you have, it's not necessarily good to be going out and eating raw fugu, blowfish, and poisoning yourself to death. You can do that internally, but you have a much more, I guess it's more, think of it almost like taking a pill versus getting an injection of a medication, right? You're going straight into the blood. And what it makes me think of, to kind of drive the point home, is we've had some issues with people getting really sick and even dying due to like resold or low-end textiles where they end up one way or another soaked with like pesticides. Like I remember that happening a few years ago. So guy puts on a pair of jeans that had some residual pesticide in it for whatever reason, because some dummy stored it in a warehouse with pesticide or something. And next thing you know, the guy's in a hospital and they're trying to figure out what's wrong with him. Right. So if you think about it that way, that's just skin contact with a dried substance in material. So we absorb countless things through our skin all the time. And we also excrete through our skin. So the health of it seems to be incredibly important. The other thing was how, you kind of came from the paleo side, and I've seen so much go toward pastured beef farmers, pastured pork, poultry, people getting into permaculture, doing their own stuff at home, whether they do it at like a small scale regenerative farm, larger scale, like a Greg Judy sheep operation. I've seen this across the board. It starts there, and it starts, I think what it does, it makes people ask really basic questions that we are not supposed to ask anymore. Like, why am I eating this thing? Where is my food coming from? What is a proper human diet? And as soon as you do that, all of a sudden you're down this path.
I think it's a couple things. One is, and I like to relate things to the listener as best I can. So we've all had those moments where we eat something that doesn't agree with us, right?
Yep.
And it comes out the front door or the back door aggressively, right? Right. And so so we have this real time, visceral, physical experience that's like, I should probably not eat that again. Not so much the case. Obviously, that's a fairly immediate like alarm system going. I wouldn't venture to that spot in the woods anymore without paying attention. And so but that's the problem with the skin, is especially when we get into all these preservatives and chemicals and parabens, and we can get granular if you want to. But I mean, what this stuff does to dysregulate our hormones and irritate us, it's so small and gradual. You mentioned a couple of situations where we've had a little bit more of an immediate. You're seeing a lot of stuff with the Monsanto settlements on Roundup in the last decade, with some of these yard guys that have just had this constant exposure to glyphosate. But the point is, with the stomach, we have a fairly sophisticated and immediate warning system that's like, it's not so good for you. With the skin, not so much. So that's one thing. And the other thing you touched on, which is like, this is how I know I'm sort of onto something, is my experience from paleo. It's like, really, I should just eat this way, even though it's like intuitively natural. It's like, really, I should put animal fat on my skin. Are you sure? And it's like, well, do you know what you're putting on your skin now? The skincare world is dominated by, I like to say, three things. Water, because pretty much every skincare product is 75% water. So it's dominated by water. It's dominated by plant-based fats, which I'm not here bad-mouthing coconut oil or shea butter or any of those things. Hopefully it's not seed oils. We can get into that later if you want to. But so lots of water, lots of seed oils and or plant-based fats, and then just chock to the gills full of preservatives and chemicals. So that's the marketplace. What we've developed, and you see some similar products to this in the marketplace. We're the first to do it with lard, but a lot of tallow-based products out there. It's full fat, so there's no water. It's shelf stable, but it does have an expiration date on it. But it's full animal fat, full fat skincare, and it's unbelievable how effective it is. I would like to say it's effective, obviously, for what's in it, but also what's not in it. And God Almighty, man, the chemicals and preservatives that they allow in our skincare, it's scary stuff. Formaldehyde, just as an example, is something that's allowed in our skincare.
Yeah, when it comes to like keeping my skin from being dry or cracked or something like that, preserving it in formaldehyde is not really what I'm going for there. Can you expand on that? What do you think the biggest problems there are in skincare? Because usually when somebody creates something totally new and different, they do it because they see a problem with the existing solutions.
Well, to be clear, we're speaking in generalization. So I'm going to make general statements about the general skincare market, which is water, preservatives, plant-based fats. If there's a new, and I've done plenty of research, you've got your beauty counters and you've got you got all these different skincare purveyors, if you will. And I have to tell you, Jack, it is all marketing. It's all the same ingredients. It's all the same chemicals. It's all the same stuff. It's just different packaging, different marketing, different superstar pimping, different products. It's all the same. So it's really just it's a new take on marketing. Now, they take it a step further, and this is what's so funny. I get this question all the time. It's like, well, how should I use your product? What I just got an email yesterday. I have 3 products. One of them is called Face Food, and it's designed, it's formulated for your neck up, the face. And I got an email from someone who's like, well, can I use this as eye cream? And it's like, well, your eyes are part of your face. Yes. I understand the question, though, because the skincare market has told us that we need a special cream for lower eye and our upper eye and our earlobe and our lips and our nose. They've fractionated the human body into it's confusion coupled with, sophisticated marketing designed to sell you more products, all the time. And, I don't hate the player, I hate the game or whatever, however, I get it. Smart stuff. But anyway, hope that answered your question.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, you're generalizing there. You're not saying that every skincare product on the market is full of multisyllabic chemicals that nobody knows what they are or what they do. But I think the most of them are. And I think if you see it advertised on TV, by a former member of the Friends cast or something, you can probably bet two things. One, the chick worth $50 million doesn't actually use Aveeno. And number two, you probably shouldn't either. That's the way I'll take that. And to me, that's not even skincare. That's across the board, everything that goes on or in your body when it's advertised that way. You probably don't want it. What's the history of skincare? How did we end up here? Like you said, okay, we need this cream for your upper eyelid, this for your lower eyelid, this for your nose, this other cream for your ass. It really does seem that way. And to me, it is marketing. It's the totally different world, but it's the My Pillow model, right? You sell everybody this styrofoam filled piece of crap pillow. And then I have towels, I have sheets, or WeatherTech. You have these awesome floor mats. And for WeatherTech, yeah, they're actually pretty good. But now we have a cup holder, a drink holder, a thing to stand on in your kitchen, right? It's just how many things can you shove back into the market? But how do we get to that point?
Man, well, if you want to go total origin story in terms of just taking lard. So this is all we used to use probably 150 years ago. And so you had at the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s, you had the introduction of seed oils into actually what I presumed was the food market for many years until I started this company. But it was really the candle and soap making market. Procter & Gamble, early on in their post-Civil War sort of rise to prominence, figured out how to detoxify and hydrogenate cottonseed oil. And so I don't remember who was who, but Procter or Gamble was a candle maker and the other one was a soap maker. And so they acquired a bunch of cotton mills in Texas to secure this supply side for an alternative to lard and tallow, which again at the time was run out of Chicago. I think the lard and tallow lobby was run out of Chicago. Chicago was the pig capital of the country, and so some price fixing there leads to them exploring this, that, and the other. Anyway, long story short, they start making a bunch of candles out of cottonseed oil. Fantastic. Turn of the century, we figure out this electricity thing. All of a sudden, the candle market starts to wane. It's like, what are we going to do with all this cottonseed oil that we've secured? And so, lo and behold, Crisco was born. So Crisco was born in the early 1900s. Started to replace lard as the preeminent cooking fat at the time, and it's just boiled over and moved over into the cosmetic and skincare world. Ironically, you didn't really talk about skincare much until the 60s and 70s. When you got into skin cancer, this increased prevalence or scaring of skin cancer. I would say it's more due to the seed oil consumption we've had versus the sun exposure. But and then it's just marketing 101. You mentioned the My Pillow thing. Yeah, it's vanity too. Let's not forget that this is beauty and vanity, which brings in a whole nother caveated marketing angle to predominantly women. You're seeing more and more men getting into skincare now. I have a young son and a young daughter, and one of my motivations is I know what these chemicals and preservatives do to kids, and so it's like, well, if we're gonna if we're going to put on an anti-bug spray or a sunscreen or a moisturizer or something, let's make sure it's not bad stuff.
You know, Mike V there in our chat is saying, wasn't Crisco originally used for industrial lubricants? As far as I know, it was. I actually find it interesting. Like one of the first marketing of Crisco when they decided, hey, let's tell people to eat this crap, was that it was 100% plant-based and therefore digestible, as though bacon fat is not digestible, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that's what we're talking about, lard. We're talking about rendered pig fat, right? Like, so, like, all of a sudden, one of the most nutritious foods that mankind has been eating since man figured out how to make a rock big enough to kill a baby pig, right? That's about how long we've been eating pigs. It's not digestible anymore. Like, it's the new pig. They have, it makes me think of like the bullet advertisements and like, you know, American Hunter and all. They show this jagged mushroom thing, like the deer are walking around and like they need armor piercing bullets for flak jacket deer or something now. Like something drastically changed. And what changed was the marketing and public perception. And as far as I know, Mike's right that Crisco was an industrial lubricant and was probably being used for things like soaps and candles. And that's when you look at craft makers today, they generally use lard or some other form of animal fat making homemade soaps and handmade soaps and candles. It's the industrial process that's gone away from that. It also just makes sense to me that which would help your body would come from a body, right? Like people get upset because like a chicken you get a broken egg in the chicken house and the chickens eat the egg. That's great. Like that way the egg doesn't rot, stink, and attract flies. Plus everything you need to make a chicken is in a chicken egg. So it's good for the chicken to eat the broken egg. And what I've seen is a direct application of this is that not so much rubbing it on my body, but when I went keto, I had a lot of skin issues. I had a lot of like rashes they weren't there all the time, but like when I get really hot working, they would pop up almost like a low level poison ivy. And I had like my elbows, like I could sand boards with my elbows. Both of my elbows were like rough. My heels were rough. They would crack. And without putting anything on it, just switching the diet to an animal fat-based diet, all that went away. So it stands to reason then if you were using it topically, it should have an effect as well. Like you said, it's your second stomach.
It is indeed. So the chickens eating the eggs, I have a funny aside for you and your listeners. I have about 45 layers in my flock right now. And I don't like dirty eggs. I gather them and put them up every day. And so we do our daily chores just to try to avoid dirty eggs. But this winter specifically, and the reason I say flock size is I occasionally would get 2 to 3 really dirty eggs a day when I went to gather, and I would literally just crack them and throw them on the ground. I completely avoided a winter molt with my flock doing that.
Wow, that makes sense. And it's also like, I think if anything's going to eat seed, it probably should be birds other than humans, right? But
Sure.
like that's interesting because of too much seed fats and nut fats and plant fats, right? One of the cautions you have to do with feeding black oil sunflower to chickens and other poultry, if you overfeed it, it can cause a premature or excessive molt.
Mm-hmm.
So animal fats stave off a molt. That's an interesting thing. And then the other side of it is feathers are kind of the outer skin of the poultry,
Yep.
right? Like that's really that's actually really interesting. Before we move on to your product, is there any other things you want to talk about within skincare that are specifically toxic, things that really don't belong on our skin?
Well, I mean, most of the preservatives, I can speak generally, most of the preservatives are derivatives or byproducts of the petroleum industry. Your parabens, if it's a couple of general rules of thumb, if it's got water in it, looking at your labels, you'll be able to know right away. Does it have water in it? It'll be the first ingredient. Agua, they come up with all sorts of fun names. So that's number one. Number two is, so if it has water, then it has preservatives. If it smells, then you get into these phthalates and some of these other scent preserving chemicals. Again, this is all around, basically all around preservatives and hormone dysregulation. They've got a bunch of different names. If you want to Google this stuff, I can tell you there are 11 prohibited chemicals by the FDA in U.S. skincare. 11. By comparison, the EU has over 1,300.
Okay.
Right. And so
Yeah.
I'm not here to tell you which ones to look out for. It's just like food, Jack. If you look at the label and you can't pronounce two things, if you look at the label and can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't eat it. And if it doesn't spoil, you probably shouldn't eat it. Well, I would say the same thing about your skincare. That's a nice little segue into Farrow specific. We make every batch fresh. We don't inventory hardly anything. I don't know if your viewers can see, but this is the shelves behind me. This is empty jars, sort of pre-labeled, ready to go out the door. And when I get a handful of orders, we make it. We use natural essential oils for our scent, which will dissipate, over time. They will dissipate. So, the thing to worry about with skincare is, if you buy it at the store, there's 100% guarantee it's not good for you in the long run. Again, you're not going to vomit something up. You're not going to, you're not going to get diarrhea from using your skincare. This is a long, slow, potential health risk to folks. But we're seeing that manifest in the world, and I see no more proof of that than the emails and texts I get every week with somebody with eczema or psoriasis or cheilitis or diaper burn. Hell, I know it works on sunburn. I completely remedied a sunburn. That's what started my venture into looking at this. So, yeah.
No, that makes sense. And I think that the skin is a primary vector for what you would call slow cumulative absorption of toxins, right? So if you go out and you eat a can of tuna fish today, you're not going to die of mercury poisoning. But if you start eating tuna 3-4 times a day, over time, that mercury is going to accumulate in your body. And I think this is part of the reason that Americans have been so easily basically weaned onto pharmaceuticals in a variety of ways, because since we don't eat a thing or get exposed to a thing and get sick, if you were to go out and pick up a roadkill possum with maggots crawling in it and somehow you were starving enough, you ate that, you're going to get sick really fast, right? You're either going to vomit and or end up in the hospital or dead, right? You'll have an immediate response to it. But our food system is toxic, and our environmental system is toxic in a far more seductive way. It's a slow process. I've said this about exercise. If you had a friend and one day he didn't exercise and eat right, and the next day he had a heart attack and died, and you said, well, what happened to Tom? He seemed like he was good. Oh, he skipped exercise and diet for one day and he died. You'd be on the ground doing push-ups and freaking eating, the top quality food like you would. But since it takes decades maybe to kill Tom with cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes and kidney failure, that gives us the entry of the pharmaceutical and the topical, right? He's got eczema. We'll put this ointment on it and some pill that they advertise in the Fox News. And it gets a little bit better. Then it gets worse. Well, something else must be wrong. Now we need another pharmaceutical. And it's either by design or it resulted in the design. So it depends on how malicious you think the people behind this are. I don't think it really matters if they designed it that way or they've capitalized on it. I think they know full well what they're doing at this point, and they have no interest in correcting it.
Yeah, I think both of those are true. I think they've probably accidentally happened upon a few things along the way that they didn't expect when it came to what we're able to sell or talk people into. The ship has way past sailed in terms of whose best interests are at heart here, and it is not the consumer. I don't care if you're talking about skincare, food, monetary policy. I mean, I've told a couple people in the last year and a half, this red pill, blue pill, black pill, white pill thing. I didn't realize it, but about 15 years ago, I had my red pill, and it was this whole move to, paleo eating and keto, carnivore, eat real food, stuff
Yeah.
that's going to spoil and that you can grow. And I never cast that lens onto the rest of the world until the last 2 years. And man, it's scary.
It is amazing. And we're going to talk about your product here in a second, because I'm sold on the whole concept of it. From diet alone has me sold on the concept, because I look at a picture of me from 10 years ago. Not only was I fatter, I look older at 40 than I do at 50, except I have more gray hair now. But when I look at my skin and the health of my skin and the way that I look and wrinkles on my face and things, it looks like I had freaking surgery done. I promise you I did not. I'm not vain enough, and I don't hate money enough to go get cosmetic surgery due to my vanity. If I had some serious injury or something and needed it, I'd see it. But I look old, so I'm going to go get Botox or something. I'm not going to do that. And it is from diet. And it is from animal fats. That's the bulk of my caloric intake comes from animal fat now. But let's talk about your skin product. You call it Smart Lard. What is Smart Lard?
Well, we're the Smart Lard is a trademark term. I trademarked it when you're the first lard-based skincare product on the market. I wanted to protect the consumer. Okay, so what is Smart Lard? It is a security blanket for the end user to know that pig, which is providing the lard and the leaf lard, was raised in a way that's good for the environment, good for the pig, a pastured pig model. So that's what Smart Lard is. It represents a commitment to ecological soundness, animal husbandry, restoring the environment as opposed to degrading it. So, again, I'm sort of the first to market, which was shocking to me when we finally launched, that no one else was doing this, which is kind of fun, right? I'm the pig guy. This, you've been through plenty of exercises before, but I got a team together to sort of figure out our brand and what we were going to do. And they're like, "Are you sure you want to put the lard out there?" And I'm like, "Hell yes." In fact, our logo is going to be a damn pig. But that it certainly differentiates you in a market. I also want to honor this animal. I've been a regenerative farmer now since 2016. They are hands down my favorite animal. They have such personality. They're smart. I love them. They're gregarious. They think they're going to eat you, right? So they're always curious and want to check you out. And I've farrowed pigs. I've bought feeders. I've sort of been through when it comes to the farming aspect, I've sort of been through various models in terms of pig production. But they're just an amazing animal. I have a video on my website about me talking about pigs, and I never intended for that video to make it to the public. I was trying to calm down. We were shooting a bunch of video for a Kickstarter campaign I did 1.5 years ago, and I needed to calm down, right? So I told the videographer, I was like, "Listen, I'm just going to rap about pigs for a couple minutes. Just let me sort of anyway, lo and behold, the damn thing ends up on my website." But, this is Farrow represents a way for me to, first and foremost, provide a product that is incredibly safe for my kids, highly effective at nourishing and feeding skin. That's great. Also honoring an animal that is, unbelievably critical to the colonization and expansion and growth of our country. I mean, again, people don't understand this very well, but a pig there's so much fat, right? And
I would say humanity in general's expansion, because throughout the world, the early explorers took pigs with them, and like a lot of islands and stuff that would become way over islands, they let them go because they knew the damn thing would survive, and when they came back, there'd be something to eat.
Absolutely, and a pig is unique in that it's an omnivore, right? So it can eat almost anything. It's not a herbivore, so it's an omnivore. It's the subcutaneous fat on a pig. Again, once you add salt to a pig, hell, you can carry a ham I've got 8-9 hams hanging in a barn outside that have just been salted and smoked, right? And I got 2 years, 3 years until I need to worry about whether or not they're going to go bad. It's just we're only, what, 150 years or less removed from basically no refrigeration, no HVAC, no gas powered vehicles. I mean, we're two old people removed from pigs being basically the number one foodstuff on the planet.
From salt pork coming in a barrel, feeding our country for over 100 years. And I would say well over 100 years. But when I say our country, I'm talking about from the Revolutionary War forward. It was about 100-year period from like right around early 1800 to 1900 where the average household at all times had salt pork. Oh, and when we think of salt pork today, we think of this little bacon-looking thing they sell at the. I'm not talking about that. They would cut up an entire pig and cram it into a barrel full of salt, and you would soak it and boil it and cook it. And it was one of the reasons it was so effective is, you know, everybody that's ever farmed knows it's quicker to bring a pig to market than a cow. But when you salt beef like that, it's edible, but it doesn't really ever go back to tasting like a normal piece of cooked beef. But salt pork, properly processed, it's not going to be much different, assuming you're cooking it in the same style, something that's more like pork pot pie than grilled ribs on the grill. It's soft. It goes back to that. Sailors lived on it. Like, it was the number one protein. Civil War, it was the number one way both sides fed their armies. It is the animal that built America. And that sounds crazy unless you know history. And then it sounds perfectly acceptable.
Well, and I got to tell you, let me bring it forward too. People, the technology, and when I say technology, okay, so technology related to farming, okay? When I say technology, I'm talking about solar stored charge powered energizers, okay? Highly electrified, lightweight poly fence that is portable, lightweight. I can take it anywhere, okay? People think cell phones and smartphones and all that and computers when it comes to technology, and those are all great. When it comes to agriculture and our ability to contain animals, okay, in a far off distant place without the threat of burning the forest down. I mean, when I mentioned I grew up with goats, well, I mean, we had an electric fence, and you know, they tell you never pee on an electric fence. Well, those old fences, you certainly didn't pee on them because it was a constant charge fence, right? Until a blade of grass would lay over against it, and it would eventually dry the grass out, light it on fire. Well, I mean, hell, that's a big deal. You don't want to burn the forest down. So what I have witnessed myself, when you go to places like Polyface or White Oak Pastures down in South Georgia, or Greg Judy's place, or any of these amazing places, what we're able to do in terms of land restoration and with pigs, due to these technological advances in today's world, is absolutely fascinating. Again, not only are they my favorite animal, they are so impactful to the soil. You know, you got a hard spot on top of a hill you need to break up, bring in the pigs. You know, the forest, people don't understand this, but forests want to take over, right? So if you've got a field with forested edges, you know, give it 100 years, the field is gone, right? And so I've got pigs, we keep them right on the edge of the forest where they're tearing stuff up and turning soil over and just keeping the forest at bay. It's the most amazing cinematic, ecological dance you've ever seen. And this is a waste product. For all intents and purposes, it's a waste product. I mean, I'd love to be in a situation, you know, Jack, 3 or 4 years from now, where it's hard for me to get my hands on pastured lard because so many people are now utilizing it for soap and you know, creams and salves, and I mean, the list goes on. Everything was made out of animal fat 200 years ago. All of it, whatever you were doing 200 years ago, animal fat.
Yeah, absolutely. It was everything, and it was even like lubricants. It was, if you think about the fact that, like, how did you light your home in the early 1800s in America? Whale oil, right? I mean, that's why men went to sea for 6 months and sometimes ended up having to eat their shipmates in a lifeboat right? Because we needed to be able to have lighting, and the number one source we had of lighting oil before kerosene and things like that was whale blubber. So we used this for everything up to a point. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about what makes the pig such a great environmental benefit? There's a whole group of people that are, to me, they're just way out in left field with this environmentalism stuff. And I'm a huge environmentalist. I know you are as well. You don't do what you're doing and not care about the environment. But they have this like accusational mode that somehow livestock is the problem. And all I can do is think back to a time like before the white man came and messed up North America, which we did, honestly, especially with barbed wire. There were 50 million estimated. And that's an estimate of bison running around the United States, migrating, mob grazing. They were our only real megafauna, true ruminant. But we also had today elk live in a few places we've reintroduced them to, like in Arkansas and Pennsylvania, but elk pretty much live in the Rocky Mountains, and a little bit in the West Coast and up into Canada. When this area was first settled by Europeans, there were elk in northern Florida, there were elk in Maine, and there was no place in between there weren't elk. There were elk in California, and there were elk in Washington State. There were literally elk everywhere. So we had a natural state where all of this megafauna was going around browsing and grazing and ruminating. And if you're going to tell me that we are environmentally better off now than we were then, I think there's something, you fell and hit your head or something, or I don't know, maybe you used too much Aveeno and you've done brain damage.
Well, it's very interesting. I bump heads with vegans quite a bit, mostly just because of the meat-based farming, but I'm sort of hoping a couple of them come after Farrow just so I can get the free publicity. But I'm always amazed at the complete and utter hubris that people have around some of this stuff, and absolute lack of understanding. So I would point, your listeners or anyone that wants to look it up. I mean, I love a lot of Jared Diamond's work, Guns, Germs, and Steel. He's got a couple of pre and post first contact books. I think it's 1492 and 1493 are interesting books in terms of just understanding the U.S. And but yeah, we've had far more ruminant species and animals living on our land. I mean, to a 10x, 100x kind of magnitude. I forget the number of beef and pork we have in the U.S. today in any one given moment, but it pales in comparison to the bison, elk, and deer alone. That forget the beavers and all the other little creatures. Humans deserve the conquistador, destroy bad rap, obviously, because we've played a part in all that. But we also deserve the historic regenerative healing aspect. I default. Joel Salatin has been a longtime friend of mine, mentor, and been very generous with his knowledge and time for me. And he always talks about these amazing gifts, these opposable thumbs that we've got. They're just as good for healing land as they are destroying it. And so animals absolutely are an integral part to a healthy ecology. Nowhere on the planet do we see an animal-less ecology that is thriving. Right. And so now we've got this opportunity again through these technological advances that go unnoticed to do immeasurable benefit. So I'll tell you a quick story. So Will Harris down at White Oak Pastures, they're in Bluffton, Georgia. They're as big. Oh, there's the website. That's cool. Yep. They're as big. White Oak is as big as you could get, I think, being a regenerative farm and vertically integrated. They got their own on-farm processing, the whole 9 yards. Will had the group, independent third party lab that did the Beyond Burger, Beyond Meat studies a couple years ago, where they made these claims that Beyond Burger was a better carbon neutral solution than grass-fed beef or than beef. And Will had the same group come down and do a 6-month study And what they figured out, this is that you can find this online. What they figured out was that every pound of beef that Will Harris puts out into the consumer world, okay, is a net carbon sink. Not emitter, a net carbon sink. What does that tell you? It tells you that there is a model that produces meat that sequesters, that stores carbon out of the atmosphere. Okay, that is end of story, end of discussion. We have a model that works, and you know, I'm a little bitty farm in East Tennessee. I'm not nearly to the scale that a Will Harris or even a polyface Joel Salatin are. I mean, this is more of a hobbyist thing for me than anything. It's to feed my kids and a couple of neighbors. I'd love to scale it, but you're looking at the farmer, right? Anyway, point being, we have a model, okay, that produces healthy ecology, healthy food, right? Healthy environment and healthy farmer. You know, get outside, fresh air. That's why I love pigs, is because I'm an omnivore too. You know, I need the sun and fresh air and fresh water and all that fun stuff. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I personally think that Alan Savory has it right when he says that most of the planet is not suitable to grow crops. Like if we take, okay, first of all, we're down to 25% land. Then we take out the poles. Like obviously we're not going to be farming in the South Pole or the North Pole in the severe Arctic. Okay, so that's all gone. Then you take, well, what's left? How arable is the land for farming grains and beans and stuff like that? And you end up with the vast majority of the planet, including the parts of the planet with the greatest regional history of conflict. Funny thing, when people don't have food, they kill each other. That's crazy, I know, but apparently it's a thing. And yet most of this land that is really not suitable to plow and put in straight lines will support ruminants, grazing, and browsing animals and omnivores like pork. And then when you do it, the land becomes more fertile and more rich, and we don't clear all the trees. We have trees here and there. We have savanna mimic ecosystems are like the most productive terrestrial ecosystems we have. Then we recharge the groundwater, rivers and streams run again. It sounds like a fiction, right? It sounds like some kind of sci-fi, like we can restore the environment by grazing animals and moving around in paddocks. That sounds like something that somebody wrote in the 1950s about, you know, like aliens came here and showed us the magic of the cow. But it's the truth. And all you have to do is play it in reverse. If you read some of the journals of early settlers that were cutting down trees in the northwestern United States for mine timbers, as they cut the trees, they watched the streams dry up. Now that has to be otherworldly. That has to feel sci-fi if you're some, you know, mountain man in the 1800s out there every day with a crosscut saw and your buddy sawing yourself into oblivion. And as you're doing this so people can pull silver out of the Montana mine, you're watching groundwater dry up. Mm-hmm. So if you put what we took away and did it back, then it only stands to reason that those ecosystems would return.
Well, you pointed out Alan Savory, and for your listeners that don't know, the work at the Savory Institute is unbelievable. The irony is, okay, so you got most of the arable land for agriculture in this country is not suitable for crops. The funny thing is, almost half of the crops we grow, the grain crops we grow in this country, are to feed cows, which don't even need grains to thrive, right? They're a ruminant species.
They shouldn't have them, right?
Well, there's some interesting debate on that's come to surface lately. I used to be completely anti-grain. I'm still pretty anti-grain, just because it's an input. You know, it's an added cost. But listen, I love pigs, and pigs are omnivores, and pigs do need grain. Yeah. But you know, if you took away 50% of the grain in this country that we grow to feed cows, okay, and then if you took
to be
away,
clear, I'm saying ruminants should not be eating grain. Pigs. Sure. Pigs an omnivore. Pigs live on nuts, seeds, mast crops, right? I don't think they should be fed exclusively that, but they make sense. A ruminant has a 3-chambered stomach for a reason. And that's why if you try to feed a cow nothing but grain, you will kill it. They're grain finished. Almost all cows eat grass for a large portion of their life.
Yep. Yep. Which is ironically why when you go to the supermarket, for your listeners that do this, supermarket beef versus what I serve my clients, it's different, but it's not. All cows get, again, 16 months worth of grass.
Yeah.
Pork and chicken and turkey, like compared to what you get in the store versus what is grown in a pastured model, they're almost completely different products. It is laughable, the difference in texture, taste, just overall quality, just because the life of a chicken or a pig. And for your listeners that don't know, your average everyday run-of-the-mill pig in this country never sees the sun and grows up on concrete. An animal that God designed to root and metabolize vitamin D from the sun the same way we do, grows up on concrete and never sees the sun. How stressed do you think that animal is? So you put them out on pasture, you give them plenty of sunshine, and all of a sudden their fats, chock full of vitamin A, E, D, all the good stuff that not only your skin craves, but our bodies crave. I mean, listen, I love bacon and I love healthy skin. So I get all of that wrapped up into this amazing creature that, and to your point earlier, and you can finish a pig in 8, 10 months.
Yep.
A good grass finished, cow beef is going to take you 2 years doing it, hitting everything perfect.
Yeah.
Is 2 years. So.
Yeah. It's interesting here. Green Country Agri-Forestry says we need fat calories in our diet, especially as we get older. Carbs are for youngsters. I believe there's a tremendous amount of wisdom in indigenous societies, hunter-gatherer societies. And even if they don't know why, they know that. And they know it because they've observed for millennia upon millennia and passing down tradition. And if you watch indigenous societies, the ones that still exist, when they go out and hunt and they bring the animals back, the children are given the lean protein. The elders are given the organ meats and fat. And then what's left over is given to women who are pregnant or nursing and the men of hunting age. And everybody else gets the lean meat. And to me, that tells you that they've identified that when you're out burning calories and chasing down, mastodons that are trying to kill you, or when you're trying to nurse a baby, or when you're old and elderly and you're being kept around for the wisdom you impart because you can't do the work anymore, fat becomes more and more and more important. And if it wasn't the case, that's not what they would do. Right? That's like there's only one reason that you get that priority, that hierarchical priority there, because it's not like the loin of an elk doesn't taste incredibly good. It's not like it's only done for flavor. You see what I'm getting at, right? It's obviously being done because they've identified some nutritional component to it. Or you look at the Inuit, who almost never get any sunlight on their skin, right? Because it's cold as hell and they're bundled up, and they have no problem with rickets or vitamin D deficiency. Well, they're living on freaking whale blubber and seal blubber, right? Which is where that fat soluble vitamin is stored. Like, we have this tradition of deriving our nutrition from these products, and we've just kind of buried it, and we buried it under a host of propaganda for industrial seeds and grains.
Jack, how lucky are we to live in a world where we get to choose, have all these choices between what we eat, what we put on our skin, blah, 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 blah. But I love looking at ancestral models. This is, again, back to the work of like the Weston A. Price Foundation. If you don't know that story, this was a dentist. He was the co-founder of the American Dental Association. Mm-hmm. This is back in the early 1900s. And it's like, all of a sudden he's noticing all of his kids are coming in with crooked teeth and narrow jaws and all that. He goes around, studies all these indigenous tribes, no modern foods, no modern dentistry, nothing, perfect teeth. And they all ate organ meats. They got plenty of sunshine, no processed sugars, it's all the same stuff. I love it. It's absolutely great.
So where do you plan to take your business, Farrow, which is it's Farrow.life. For people were asking earlier about it. What does your future plans look like? And tell us a little bit more about your product. We know it's lard-based. Is it just lard, or what is your skincare line like?
Sure. So we've just launched. So we have what I call a total skincare bundle, and it's 3 products together. We have a skin food, a face food, and then I have what I'm calling a skincare elixir, so that you can buy the 3 together. I think they work really well together, or you can obviously buy them separately. There you go. And so the skin food and the face food are different formulations of a combination of 3 fats: lard, leaf lard, and beef tallow. So those 3 together, along with honey and essential oils, make the product. And the face food is designed, again, for the neck up, skin food for the neck down. And this is like little dab will do you, put it in spots where you've got irritation or dryness or cracks or whatever the case may be. The elixir is a CBD elixir. We grew all of the CBD on our farm a couple years ago regeneratively. And, CBD's got a lot of different applications. I don't put it in my skincare because it doesn't absorb through the skin very well, and you don't get the benefits of CBD unless it actually gets into the receptors internally. So we use it sublingually under the tongue. It reduces inflammation. It's antimicrobial, inflammatory. Tons of omega-3 in hemp oils and hemp in general. But I've found that by reducing stress and anxiety and inflammation internally, that helps the skin, right? So it's just it's another take on CBD and its benefits, which we don't need to go too deep down the hemp plant and all of its craziness with the legalities and this, that, and the other. It's a non-psychoactive, so it's just CBD, MCT oil, and then we put a little orange essential oil in there to give it some flavor, but very clean, not a lot there. But yeah, those are the 3 products. And I've got a discount code for your listeners. If you just, for those that are interested, you can type survival into your discount code. That'll save you 20%. And then we have a 15% more savings for anybody that wants to get on a subscription. Again, we make this.
Give us that discount code again. I'll put it up on the screen for people. What was that discount code?
Yeah, survival.
Okay. There you go, guys.
That was as creative as I could get.
No, it's good. People will remember.
Yeah, but yeah, set it up on a subscription-based model. That's where I'm trying to push through. You asked sort of where I want to go. I want to highlight the benefits of regenerative ag, right? Regenerative agriculture, because you don't get the benefits of my creams without raising a healthy pig and a healthy beef, right? That's how they metabolize all the good stuff. So I want to do that. I want to provide a product that's, gentle for kids. The more kids we can get, not dysregulating their hormones at a young age, the better. It works great. Again, back to the vanity piece. It just feeds the skin. Reducing wrinkles and fine lines and all that, and the dark spots. It's sort of a utility knife, Swiss Army knife for skincare is what I like to call it. But yeah, I'd love to. We're trying to grow our business. We just launched in January. You understand this. I'm a slightly right of center white male, so the algorithms don't like me very much. So I'm always excited to be able to talk regenerative ag and healthcare and all sorts of fun stuff with people like you and other podcasts, non-traditional media. The algorithms do not like me very much, and so I'm trying to spread the lard through other means. But yeah, listen, I'm happy to be on here today. I'm in awe of what you've been able to do. I love your show and all the information that you put together. It's an absolute honor for me to be here. And I appreciate any and all of your listeners' support. Give it a try. You will not be disappointed. This stuff works unbelievably well for a whole host of stuff. I can't tell you if it heals or cures anything, but by God, the lard works in mysterious ways, Jack.
And I think, like you said, a little goes a long way. Like people need to don't compare this to a tub of Aveeno, right? Like, because you're talking about using for an application, like it says right on the thing. I was just reading it now, a pea-sized amount. So if you look at one of those relatively small containers, a lot of peas would fit in there.
Correct. Well, and I've said this from the very beginning. Again, I've worked with a bunch of different branding and marketing folks and trying to figure this out. And I'm like, listen, this stuff works. It works amazingly well. It's not a traditional skincare product. It's not going to go on the same way as your Avena or Clinique or anything. It's not. It's just not. But by God, if you just give me a minute and give me a chance, Farrow is unbelievable for your skin. And so, I'm excited to be on today, and certainly hope your listeners enjoyed our talk. And I'd be happy to come on and talk regenerative farming or anything else anytime, man. I love what you do.
Yeah, definitely get another guest form filled out and come back on. Again, the discount code, folks, is survival. The website is farrow.life. And I will have links to all of not just the website, but the social media, as limited as the use is, because I did see that anything, and I'm with you. A lot of these larger social media platforms today, you just don't get any traction anymore. I've got 110,000 followers on Facebook, and I put something up and 13 people see it. So I've kind of I'm not spinning my wheels on that crap anymore. But I will put the links that you send in anyway. And I appreciate you being able to say, again, the discount code survival. What's the discount you're offering on that?
20% off your first
20%
purchase.
Off.
And again, another 15% if you sign up for a subscription, whether that's monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly. And you can cancel anytime. So Lord help us all.
And, I hope people take away multiple things from this. One, we had a great discussion on the environmental impact of doing livestock right and how it's positive. We talked a little bit about regenerative farming. It'd be great to have you come back on and just talk about that as a subject to itself. But we talked about what this discussion was really on is a value-added product, and whether it's a skincare product, whether it's some sort of a seasoning packet, whether it's an herbal tea. Like, I think that the future for regenerative farmers is going to be around things like value-added products, or also around things like Salatin talks about with like fiefdoms. Like having people come in and I have my farm and I'm taking care of pigs and chickens and cows. I'm freaking done. I'm not playing with bees if I haven't. But maybe there's a beekeeper somewhere that I want to bring in, and then that's a whole new product set. Or taking something like you have this pork and you're doing this amazing processing, but you can only sell so much lard as lard. But now if we can package it into a skincare product, now we put an actual profitable margin on it so that the business can remain a going concern. And I think that a lot of young people that want to get into this, it's not just going out and growing food. It's growing food, it's marketing food, it's selling food, and it's doing value add. And it's becoming an astute business person. And there's a certain amount of hustle that has to go into this, because otherwise you're competing with Tyson and Purdue, and you can't. You can't compete if you're going to be a pastured poultry producer, for instance. You're not going to compete with Tyson, who can produce 100,000 chickens a month per half-acre chicken house. You're not going to do it. And they're taking bucket loaders away of dead chickens every day, by the way, and just throwing them away or feeding them to pigs that are now going to get sick. And I'd like to point one more thing out before we wrap up. When it comes to any sort of animal fat, I think it's incredibly important where you're sourcing an animal if you're relying on fat, whether it's for skincare or dietary intake. Our fat is where we store so many of the toxins that we sequester up in our body. And I think there's plenty of people out there that had the same experience I did. Like, you decided one day, hey, look at me in the mirror. I can say whatever I want about myself, but I'm freaking fat. And I got to do something about it. And they changed their diet. And if you go keto, paleo that way, the weight loss is stunning. And the transformation in your life is stunning. But the first 3 to 4 weeks, all kinds of weird shit happens. You break out in these like rashes. Like I got these they were like pimples, but they were like little mini boils. And there's like, usually when a pimple comes on, like, oh, that's going to be a pimple there tomorrow. There's nothing. You wake up in the morning, there's this angry pustule thing. This is all those toxins dumping into your system as you're burning that fat. If you're eating CAFO beef, if you're eating Smithfield pork, that's fed all this crap. In that fat is all the stored toxins that animal's eating, and you're consuming those toxins. And if you were to go fabricate your own, Smithfield lard skincare, you're putting those toxins into your skin. And I know that's hard for people to accept, but that's biology. I might not be a biologist, but I know a little bit about biology, and that's biology, that we do in fact store toxins. That's why you hear about the guy that popped a fat cell one day and had an LSD flashback, because we bind these things up in our fat, and so do animals. Especially an animal is analogous to humans in the biology as a pig. Pigs are actually really good analogs to humans. We use them for veterinary training. We use them for human medical training. We use pig valves for valve replacements in human hearts, right? So if it's bad for us, it's probably bad for them too.
Well, and I'll add, that was a good last few minutes closer. I will add, pigs metabolize vitamins exactly the same way humans do. And so, adjacent to skincare or just general human health, vitamins A, E, and D, that's the trifecta of skincare vitamins, right? Pigs metabolize all three of those the same way we do. So, the pigs should be raised like humans, out and about, plenty of sunshine, fresh water, fresh air, all the fun stuff. It's man, it's been a really fun time to talk to you today, Jack.
Well, again, man, I really enjoyed this. I happily tell you, fill out. We have the guest form back up. We just put it back up. Anybody out there wants to be on the air, fill it out completely, or we will throw away your application. Make sure you do fill it out completely. That's how we assess you. Love to have you back on again, Charles. Anybody else, love to have you on. And thanks to all who were in the live feed today. And remember, guys, Farrow.life, discount code survival, 20% off the entire line of products there. And Charles, thank you for being with us today. And thanks to everybody again that tuned in.
Thanks, Jack.